these food corporations are now doing a bypass. They are sort of going right to the heart of like hitting the brain response without giving the body the ability to sort of have the experience. I think that's where we find with the ultra processed foods, we basically supersede the experiential part of eating right into the system without giving you the whole experience.
Welcome back to Illuminating Being. This is a space where we are slowing down and really just start to notice what's been there all along. And so lately, I've been thinking or sitting because someone put this idea in my head, my guest anyway. That feels just simple, but the more I thought about it, the more it kind of opens up, how we lost this ability to actually feel. And I think not just like emotionally, but physically, like through food, through our body, through sensation. Um, and so, and also when we think about food, we turned it into like eating numbers, labels, being efficient. And I speak in spreadsheets, but I don't think that's our body should speak in spreadsheets.
Right.
So, um, Dr. Summers, welcome back. And I just want to start here. When you think about how people eat today, what feels most, I guess, disconnected to you, or, a realization that maybe you've been sitting with?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one, we're in this pressure cooker of like the challenge is like to get it right, right? We're just like, it's not like there's a perfect meal, especially as I have the younger families just introducing foods to their kids. Hopefully, many are breastfeeding, but it's bottle of breast. And what do you do next? What's the path forward? And how do I know they're getting enough? Or what should they get? And I mean, I think these are time immemorial questions that my guess is we didn't have podcasts, we didn't have social media, we didn't have ways 1,150 years ago to sort of expand this conversation to the greater public. But I'm sure parents had it on their mind, but they also had how to survive on their mind. So that didn't take as much space. And today I think we've put this into the space of our thinking minds, and so it's also fatiguing, I think. So I think part of the challenge is how to sort of decompress this. To me, I want to encourage the eating and the mealtime. It should be enjoyable, right? There shouldn't be this overarching pressure to get it right, to make sure your kids eat everything. Um, I'm still a member of the Clean Plate Club. It's sort of hard to undo. And I think we've talked about creating habits. And I think that's, to me, sort of the sort of starting point is just to help create good eating habits, a good space around the table. Um, Everything else will follow suit, right? And then having awareness. I think just being aware at the table, that is the key to what we can do as a parent, and we're the role model.
Right. That's interesting. And so when you say that, I mean, and all of that, it feels like we've drifted away from something that used to be very intuitive. And we didn't have to think about it as much. And fundamentally, no one was actually maybe searching for a podcast or someone else to tell them what to do. But so there really has been a shift. Um, and it's been a slow shift. And so I guess I want to pick up on this idea of, we were talking about in our previous conversation, this idea of crunch, which is kind of what led me down this rabbit hole and to like bring to this episode, this idea like of being present with the food, I guess. So like elaborate on that.
Yeah. I mean, I know personally, like I got into a phase where making all these smoothies, they're great. They can have this nutritional value. You can have your protein. You can do everything in there, right? But the thing that to me is always missing is a crunch factor. Like to me, something tells me I've eaten something when it's not just I feel the crunch, you can hear the crunch. There are multiple levels of sort of sensory impacts that some are conscious, some are subconscious. So I think this crunch part, the subconscious, but it has it came to the fore, I think, more as we've had these conversations over the last year and years as in the office that that's an aspect that, I don't really hear many people talking about, but we talk a lot about, all these gurus and restaurateurship and, the pictures of seeing all these displays of beautiful foods. Um, but the visual is also important, but then what happens when it gets to your mouth? It's the taste and the flavors, the aroma, all of our senses, right? The five senses. And so that, is driven by our internal instincts and desires. And I do think that crunch seems like a simple, I mean,
Yeah, it's simple, but
Nestle's crunch, right? It's a candy bar, but they nailed it, right? That's a perfect way to sell your candy. There's the other ones that melt in your mouth, not in your hand, and all sorts of great little zingers. Um, but also led me to sort of another book that I'm reading that's talking about this sort of synchrony and how we think, which I think we can sort of expand in this conversation a little bit, but also something called interoception, which is a whole nother level of we have our 5 senses, but we have the internal senses, like our body also is sensing what's going on within our internal organs, sending us other messages that we don't need we would be overwhelmed if all of those messages came to our conscious level. We'd never get out of bed probably. But
Hmm.
some of them are probably related to this sense of crunch, to sense of fullness. So, there's a superhighway they call the vagus nerve in our body, which basically is connected to all of our organs. And so those organs are giving the feedback that goes to our brain to tell us your stomach's full, your stomach's empty, something's happening while you're eating your foods or in your needs. You've just exercised. It's saying, hey, I need more fluids. Any number of things could be happening.
right. So it's almost, pointing to this, the body is looking for feedback intuitively. So it's, food is not just, essence, fuel to us. It is also seeking an experience so that it can, communicate to all these other um triggering or moments that make us
Totally.
exist. And so being that it becomes something that we've lost, um and it's being replaced by something. Anyway, this is interesting. So if and if the body is wired for these signals, um, and modern food, it's almost is being created, like you just said, like we've created food to like speak this language back to us. Like so we've almost like intercepted like what we've learned and then creating a world where it becomes so ultimately like is the food are we still choosing the food or is the food choosing us?
Well, I mean, that's why we have these food scientists, right? These food corporations are now doing a bypass, right? So they are sort of going right to the heart of like hitting the brain response without giving the body the ability to sort of have the experience, right? I think that's where we find with the ultra processed foods, we basically supersede the experiential part of eating, where you've just done all of the hard work that the body does in the corporate plant and delivered something that just goes right into the system, right? Without giving you the whole experience, right? So I think we
Right.
talk about whole foods. Part about having a whole food is that you get to digest it, you get to let the body do the processing so that your body is the plant, right? It is the workhorse. It's got all the machinery to do all the hard work, which creates the healthy outcome, right? I mean, we've sort of alluded to this, but that's, we have seen with the ultra processing in societies around the world that our health status and consequences are the diseases of affluence, right? And diseases of affluence are not related to we just have more food, we have more processed food.
I think this is like yeah, and I'm having this realization. Here's something I struggle with, and I was actually just talking with Shelly, my companion around nutrition. This idea, which affluence or Yes, we have access to this food, but it's a realization right now that I don't actually know. I mean, I don't know, like, what hunger feels like anymore, like those signals. And so, like, if I don't, I genuinely almost like there needs to have some deprogramming, and maybe why we're talking about it right now is like this realization. If once you know, so then you can pay attention to it. But like, so I just don't feel hungry, but I know that I must consume for my energy. But like, then there's this fullness factor. And then really what I think is the sad part is the satisfaction of the experience of eating the food. So just, being in a world where I've had the I wouldn't even call it a pleasure anymore. Access to those foods that programmed me to think that it's really delicious and desirable are actually not the best for me. So it's like this rewiring that must occur. And I think just having the realization that that's all happening within you, like, don't be so hard on yourself when you're trying to make better choices towards eat keeping it simple, such as eating whole foods, filling your plate with the rainbow, having this conversation with your children, which seems real woo-woo, but it's like it's fundamentally happening to all of us because we have access to all of this processed quick foods. So anyway, like, I guess my point was there's a realization without the crunch for this sensory experience, we've like maybe, snipped or disconnected some of our neural responses or would you call it right? What's the one nerve that's connected to everything? What
Vegas.
right? Like it's not gone though, right? We can rebuild it, right?
Right, it's not Vegas like going to Las Vegas, but the Vegas, right. I mean, it is somewhat of a gamble here, what we're doing with our lives and, sort of putting all these companies in charge of our health is sort of a faux way to sort of, like, think that they know better, right? They're
Right.
purported to be the the owners of nutrition and they're our delivery system, and so I think, we need lots of small farmers. I mean, farms are sort of the essence of like, if you grow just one crop, you have a problem if there's a drought or something. Many farmers had multiple crops, right? Sometimes you have a better season of one versus another. Each of those different crops help propagate and create a healthy soil. I mean, there's a whole chemistry behind this, right?
Right.
And the essence of our food system is that the better foods that are really dependent on the healthy soil, right? And so what we do know from industrial farming is that they have to use not only fertilizer, but pesticides. And so the more of those sort of things that go into the growing of our foods, the less rich and nutrient dense the soil is. And so we end up getting bigger vegetables and fruit. They're bigger, but they're not better. They're not packed with more
Or
nutrients.
well, this could be daunting to our listeners to realize like there's a much larger complex system that's playing a part in your ability or accessibility to bringing us back to our roots. No pun intended. So, um, what's the first thing that someone should start noticing? I guess, like, let's just say this is. I mean, maybe they've heard of it. It's in the periphery, like big, what agriculture, the food industry, but like, what's something it's not changing, just noticing to kind
Yeah,
of
I mean, I think
unlock this awareness.
I think keep it simple, right? I think that's sort of my guiding sort of idea for advising families is really, I mean, you don't, there's great cookbooks, there's all these sort of, websites and things, and sometimes you need a checklist. So I think there are, simple things.
Sometimes you do, Dr. Summers. We're structural beings. We need them.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Right. So it's good to have, there are people who are very good at organizing. So you create a pantry, right? And you have staples. So what are the things that are
Well,
must-haves
that's a
so that
change. I'm saying noticing. Like, let's step them into like what's something for them to notice, and then we can think about
so I
change.
would just notice, when you eat, what what you enjoy. What is it about eating that apple or eating the orange or just sitting at the dinner table? Is it just being together as a family? Like, take a pause and sort of savor the bite, right? What is
What
savor that bite?
what if you're eating something like McDonald's fast food French fries?
Well, I
You're
think
gonna notice something. What should we right?
well,
Right?
I
Like
think there's nothing to be nothing bad about even that. We're watching this series Hacks. Have you seen that?
Mhm.
So there's an
Yeah.
episode where they go and they get this stand-up comedian. It's like she's like doesn't need any of that, but then a woman she's brought her on board to help her reignite her comedy, stand-up comedy. Says we should just have McDonald's. So you see her eating this McDonald's French fry and dipping it and like like looking at it and the ketchup on it. And so it's like there is a moment for that too, right? I mean, it's not that I don't want to cast all the big business as evil.
I didn't cast it. I'm just saying you said notice when you're eating an apple or an orange.
Well, I mean,
Now
notice
I'm
what
like,
you
well, what
eat.
are we noticing when we eat I would say a delicious French fry.
Well, I think what is it about the French fry? I mean, look, they did nail the French fry, right? I mean, it is whatever the oil is they use, the crispiness of it, right? There's an enjoyment factor there. So it shouldn't be relegated to that is just bad for you.
I didn't relegate it. You're doing it, not me.
I,
I'm just
but I
I
think
guess
you
my
can enjoy that. But I think
here's what I would
uh,
notice is like,
if it's an
why
everyday,
is it so delicious?
right?
Um, and then, like just I think do the little research of like how do they actually create that French fry? And then right there, if you go down that rabbit hole, you're empowered to make that decision or not, but you're conscious of why you react the way we do. And so same thing with Eat the Rainbow, try the apple, try the orange, and then have that like noticed
The awareness.
experience. So, and I don't think you and I are saying change. I was just saying like just that exercise, I guess, is my point I wanted you to
I
share
think,
is,
yeah, I
to
think it's a
slow
good point.
down, realize how fast how fast can you eat a large French fry versus how fast you can eat an apple, really like just how we move through everything is like something that actually gives you this awareness that then gives you the steps to think about creating some change.
Right, and it may be that, we call these things fast food, so maybe one change, I mean, one, the awareness of just what is it about the foods that you eat, no matter what they are, and two, maybe putting the brakes on for the fast food and just taking a little more time, or be aware of the food and taste it, and what is it about you enjoy? I mean, they obviously hit something where people keep going back to those
I
things.
mean,
So
I have like a core memory of, we live on a road that to go to 75% of our locations as a child, we would drive past a McDonald's, and I remember having feelings like if they really loved me, they would stop there more often. Like, because I'm very young, and that McDonald's is still in my life, and I drive my children past it. And I guess now, you know, it's like the last thing on earth I would do, and I know that my children are probably having those same thoughts. um, but why I've been able to like not stop is really because I learned about how they make those things. And I just felt like no one convinced me to other than I just learned about it, observed it, and then processed it. Um, but anyway,
right. I mean, look, I think a lot of what we know we're influenced by is in our world, it's sound and vision, right? So the visuals, and so the PR companies, in the early days, it was just radio. So we had all these jingles, plop, plop, fizz, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. All these companies had nice jingles to sell their products and they were catchy. And then television came into being and we had billboards too, but they were just sort of static, right? And then you created these visuals, right? And even now with social media and all these sort of things that people, you got YouTubers, you got all sorts of ways that people are experiencing things in a different way.
and I feel it's not really about food anymore. I mean, there's a connection between this disconnection from food and like a larger disconnection from ourselves, which I think is what we talk about a lot here. um, yeah.
Well, I think, what two things that also can happen is that don't underestimate the power you have as a parent. All eyes are on you. So your emotional being and experience at the dinner table or at any meal is being observed by your kids. So whether you say eat that broccoli on your plate or whatever, by you just doing those things sends a message,
Right.
right? And so we don't have to outright say things to our kids. Sometimes the actions can speak louder than the words.
I know my one child told me, I think I was just in a moment. He's older now, and I was reflecting on an an area of engagement with another child, and he's like, "Well, you're doing it all well, but sometimes you just try too hard." And I think what he meant is, like, you're always trying to put words to what you're trying to
Right.
move through them, and I'm like, "You're right." Like, I just by just doing or being present or creating or making, I don't have to say, "This is why we're doing that." Um,
Look, I mean, there are
I'm
okay,
probably
we're
o
doing
I
a
overthink
recipe.
everything.
Right, no, I think if you're, like, have a cooking show and you're going through the step-by-step process, you do each of the steps, right? And you show people how to do things. Um, and I think what we're trying to say is that there isn't one way to raise your kids. There isn't one way to feed your kids. Um, and just be involved, right? And don't think that it has to be done A, B, or C. And, you could do the same thing. Parents can do the same thing, and 100 kids are gonna respond 100 different ways. I mean, just because you put something in a bowl and one kid just digs in and eats all those blueberries, and the next 5 kids don't touch them or throw them, but any experience with the food is a positive experience. So if kids are mashing them or throwing them or squeezing them, I mean, that is all part of their getting to know the food. If they're 13 and doing it, maybe that's a different story. But when they're just early eaters, they really just need to experience it.
Right. Well, I think, a lot of this lands with me. It's something, as you said, as simple. I mean, let's keep it simple, but like as something as if we can't feel something as simple as food, something that we do every day, it's not a stretch to think we might be missing other signals too. So just, emotionally, mentally, even relationally. So I think, my takeaway is just this idea of um, fixing it's not about fixing us or fixing what we eat, but it's maybe just about relearning how to listen to our responses. So, like when we introduce food and, this idea of crunch, right? There's like something much larger happening. And so not to like overanalyze it, but it is real. And so just once you know, and then be in that space.
Right. I think we're basically talking about just having the awareness of being present and allowing, giving the opportunity for different, we talk about textures and things, but the crunch that there's something about the food that's bigger than just the nutrient consistency of that, but of what that brings to the table. I mean, whether it's a peach that even if it doesn't have a crunchy hard sound, but there's like a ripe peach essence when you bite into it that it's either ripe enough or it's just perfect, and that sensation, it's a cascade, right? You just know
Right.
it. And then there's the flavor and the fullness of it and all of those sort of things that are just enraptured in that moment that when you've had, like, one of those perfect peaches, there's a little fuzz on the skin. I mean, it's just a whole lot that you notice, but in the moment, it's not like you're each one of those items, you're, like, just, describing it. It just is there.
Exactly. So I ask you if you have a quote or a book recommendation
Yeah,
relative to this topic, if at all.
yeah, I think, the only thing I would say personally is just that, engage in more foods that go crunch, right? So,
There you go.
uh,
Your own personal quote.
my own personal quote, I mean, just yeah,
So
and
maybe that's
and
the invitation, not to
exactly,
overhaul everything, but to notice one meal where there may be a crunch, slow it
right,
down, pay
right,
attention, and then actually experience it. Because it's really about reconnecting to the body and really to each other. So, talk about your
100%,
crunch with
right,
others.
right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
love it.
shout it out, name it, and I think if it's just like we were talking about being present at the table, if your kids are watching you, they can hear it. Even the little toddler or little infant is watching and hearing everything that goes on. So if you bite into a cucumber and it goes crunch, they're gonna who knows what that's gonna mean to them.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up, take to our listeners, take one moment from this, maybe bring it into your day, slow down, notice it. Um, and if you're feeling that pull, you're already on the path. So join us as we continue to talk about these exploratory thoughts, and we'll see you next time on Illuminating Being.
Sounds awesome.